So friends, the Supreme Court just ordered the Trump administration to return Abrego Garcia to the United States after they unconstitutionally deported him to El Salvador. Let's talk about that, because justice matters. Hey all, Glenn Kirshner here. So friends, in a 9-0 opinion on the immigration front, specifically on the matter of the Trump administration's unconstitutional deportations of human beings, the court just ordered the Trump administration to, quote, facilitate the return of Abrego Garcia. So we're going to start with the new reporting. Then we're going to have just a quick look at the new Supreme Court ruling, and then we're going to hit a couple of main takeaways. But if you'll indulge me, just 30 seconds of housekeeping. As you may know, here at Justice Matters, we are an all-volunteer operation up and running 7 days a week, posting a legal analysis video every day, and we couldn't do it without your support. So if you're interested in more formally supporting our all-volunteer efforts, our mission, our content, please feel free to come on over to patreon.com. You can sign up to become a patron, and if you do, I will send you some Team Justice and Justice Matters stickers and a personal handwritten note of thanks. Okay, let's turn to the new reporting. This from the BBC. Headline, U.S. top court instructs Trump to return man wrongly deported to El Salvador. And that article begins, the U.S. Supreme Court has instructed the Trump administration to facilitate the return of a Maryland man who was mistakenly, friends, please put a pin in that word, mistakenly, who was mistakenly deported to a mega jail in El Salvador. The Trump administration has conceded that Kilmar Armando Garcia was deported due to a claimed administrative error, but appealed against the district court's order to facilitate and effectuate his return to the U.S. On Thursday, in a 9-0 ruling, Supreme Court justices declined to block the lower court's order. That order requires the government to facilitate Abrego Garcia's release from custody in El Salvador and to ensure that his case is handled as it would have been had he not been improperly sent, the justices ruled. Mr. Garcia, a Salvadorian immigrant, is one of dozens of migrants the U.S. placed on military planes last month and sent to El Salvador's infamous CICAT, Center for the Confinement of Terrorism, a prison known for housing gang members under an agreement between the two countries. In a statement on Thursday evening after the top court's decision, Simon Sandoval Maschenberg, a lawyer for Mr. Garcia, said, the rule of law prevailed. Quote, the Supreme Court upheld the district judge's order that the government has to bring Kilmar home. Now, friends, let's take a quick look at the new Supreme Court ruling in the case of Kristi Noem, Secretary, Department of Homeland Security, versus Mr. Garcia. On March 15, 2025, the United States removed Kilmar Armando Abrego Garcia from the United States to El Salvador, where he is currently detained in the Center for Terrorism Confinement, CICAT. The United States, the Trump administration, acknowledges that Abrego Garcia was subject to a withholding order, that is a judge's court order, forbidding his removal to El Salvador, and that the removal to El Salvador was therefore illegal. Let me highlight that. The Trump administration concedes that their deportation of Mr. Garcia to El Salvador was illegal. The United States, the Trump administration, represents that the removal to El Salvador was the result of an administrative error. On Friday, April 4, the U.S. District Court for the District of Maryland entered an order directing the government, the Trump administration, to facilitate and effectuate the return of Abrego Garcia to the United States by no later than 11:59 p.m. on Monday, April 7th. And now, friends, comes something of a curiosity. The order from the trial court judge properly requires the government, the Trump administration, to facilitate Abrego Garcia's release from custody in El Salvador and to ensure that his case is handled as it would have been had he not been improperly sent to El Salvador. The intended scope of the term effectuate in the district court's order is, however, unclear and may exceed the district court's authority. The district court should clarify its directive with due regard for the deference owed to the executive branch in the conduct of foreign affairs. And friends, we'll come back to that point in a minute, but essentially the court orders the Trump administration to facilitate the return of Mr. Garcia to the United States. But then Justice Sotomayor writes separately to call this by its name. Statement of Justice Sotomayor, with whom Justice Sotomayor, with whom Justice Kagan and Justice Jackson join, respecting the court's disposition of the application. The United States government, the Trump administration, arrested Kilmar Armando Abrego Garcia in Maryland and flew him to a terrorism confinement center in El Salvador, where he has been detained for 26 days and counting. To this day, the Trump administration, the government, has cited no basis in law for Abrego Garcia's warrantless arrest, his removal to El Salvador, or his confinement in a Salvadoran prison, nor could it. That's right, friends. The Trump administration doesn't even try to justify its lawlessness, nor could it. Thank you, Justices Sotomayor, Kagan, and Ketanji Brown Jackson. Thank you for standing squarely on the constitutional side of the equation. Okay, friends, a few quick takeaways. Remember I said when we were reading through the BBC reporting to put a pin in the word mistake, administrative error, just serendipity that we deported Mr. Garcia to El Salvador when there was a court order in place saying the government may not deport Mr. Garcia to El Salvador. Whoops, mistake, administrative error. Let me tell you, friends, I don't believe that for 1 minute. Is it more likely this was a product of an intentional decision by the Trump administration, right, for purposes of callousness and cruelty, for delivering a message to all immigrants or anybody we don't like? We may just pick your ass up and send you to a prison in foreign lands with no due process. Mistake, administrative error. Those claims have not been tested in the crucible of a trial or any adversarial proceedings, and I will not believe this was a simple mistake unless and until we see evidence supporting that assertion that this was an administrative error. Second takeaway, the majority opinion, remember the three justices who wrote a separate concurrence, very strongly worded separate concurrence, though they agreed with the majority opinion, those three justices, Sotomayor, Kagan, and Ketanji Brown Jackson. The majority opinion, Chief Justice Roberts and company say, well, the trial court judge in Maryland ordered Garcia to be returned by the Trump administration, and she said the administration should facilitate and effectuate his return. But Chief Justice Roberts and company say, well, facilitate Garcia's return to the U.S., certainly, but effectuate? We don't know what the Maryland federal court judge meant by effectuate, and I guess Roberts and company have to grapple with the word effectuate and what it means. I don't know if they took grammar lessons from Bill Barr, who had to struggle and grapple with what the word suggested means. But they say, well, effectuate may be a little much, because that may interfere with the Trump administration's authority to conduct foreign affairs and diplomacy. So we're going to send it back to the trial court judge to clear up what she meant by effectuate. Are you kidding me, guys? Are you kidding me? Did you not read what Justice Sotomayor wrote? Grow a pair. Grow a pair. And when I say guys, I use that word advisedly and intentionally. Yes, I know Justice Amy Coney Barrett is apparently in that 6-justice majority opinion. But can you please just grow a pair? Can you say, listen, Trump administration, you admitted you unlawfully, unconstitutionally, and in violation of a federal court order deported Mr. Garcia to a prison in El Salvador. Return him. Effectuate, facilitate, put him on a plane. Get him back here. Make this right. So let's not grapple with what the word effectuate means. Final takeaway, and this one is a little off the beaten path, but I want to return just briefly to the BBC reporting and touch on another issue, and that is the Solicitor General, John Sauer, and the arguments that he is making and having other attorneys make before the Supreme Court. The Solicitor General is basically the point person for the Department of Justice, and God help us, the United States, before the Supreme Court deciding what issues DOJ should take before the Supreme Court. Here's what the BBC said about John Sauer and his involvement in this. U.S. Solicitor General John Sauer wrote in his emergency court filing, quote, "The Constitution charges the President, not the federal district courts, with the conduct of foreign diplomacy and protecting the nation against foreign terrorists, including by effectuating their removal." Oh, some strong words there from Solicitor General Sauer. But you know what? His vehement rhetoric sort of falls away in the face of the reality that the Trump administration, that John Sauer is in court defending, propping up, unconstitutionally and in violation of a federal court order deported Mr. Garcia to El Salvador, the very country the judge ordered the U.S. government not to deport him to. So, how are things going under the leadership, air quotes, of Solicitor General John Sauer in the Solicitor General's office at the Department of Justice? This from the Washington Post. Headline, "Many lawyers who argue for Trump at Supreme Court are heading for the exit. At least half of the frontline attorneys in the Solicitor General's office plan to leave," people familiar with the matter said, as Trump's emergency requests pile up at the High Court. And that article reads in part, "At least half of the frontline lawyers in the elite Justice Department office that represents the Trump administration at the Supreme Court are preparing to leave or have already announced their departures, an unusually high amount of turnover at a time of intense litigation involving the president's initiatives. The people planning to leave the Solicitor General's office have various reasons, according to several people close to the workforce who spoke on the condition of anonymity to discuss upcoming personnel changes. Many are uncomfortable or turned off by directives from Justice Department leaders, including Attorney General Pam Bondi's demand for zealous advocacy of President Donald Trump's agenda," these people said. And friends, let's end with this. If you were an attorney, would you want to work for the likes of John Sauer, who's making these arguments in court, and who also used to be Donald Trump's criminal defense attorney, John Sauer, who argued in the D.C. Federal Circuit Court of Appeals, and I know because I was in there watching and listening to him make this argument, that a president could use SEAL Team 6 to eliminate, kill his political opponent, and he could do so with immunity from prosecution. All good. Of course, he said, well, unless the House of Representatives impeached him and the Senate convicted him on that article of impeachment. Well, then maybe he could be prosecuted, but otherwise, no, he gets to do it. He gets to use SEAL Team 6 for that exact mission. Is this the kind of guy you want to work for as Solicitor General? Is it any surprise that people are leaving the SG's office in droves? Doesn't surprise me, because I have a feeling to the majority of attorneys at the Solicitor General's office who understand their oath, their obligation to represent the interests of the American people, not the interests of a corrupt President of the United States. To those people, like to us, justice matters. Friends, as always, please stay safe. Please stay tuned. And I look forward to talking with you all again tomorrow.